Cultivate. This is our first episode, and I am so happy that you're joining us today. I am excited for this new space that we have created for you. This space was created with you in mind, the everyday woman, the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, the friends. And the heart behind this is for us to simply have conversations. There's a lot of voices going around. There's a lot of voices in our lives. And I believe that there should be a safe space where we can lean in, learn from one another. And we're going to do this through conversations. I believe that there's power in our story. There's power when we share our story, but also when we are able to listen in to other people's stories. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have different guests, some of my friends, people who have incredible testimonies and stories to share. And we're just going to have discussions and talk about faith, talk about life, the reality of life. And so this space is for you to be encouraged. It's for you to find hope. It's for you to come on in here and laugh with us, sometimes maybe cry with us, but for you to find yourself as a part of this story. Maybe you don't necessarily have gone through these specific things, but you have experienced hurt. You've experienced the joys of life, the difficult seasons of life. And so this is what this podcast is all about. And I am happy that you're tuning in today. And we created this space. Every part of this is with you in mind. I want you to feel like you're just sitting here, being part of this space, being part of the conversation. And I really, truly believe that God's going to do some incredible things. And Cultivate really was born out of this idea that when we cultivate, which means to care for, to tend to work on something, that when we cultivate our heart, our lives will flourish. And so that's what we're going to do. Through these conversations, we're going to allow God to speak to us, and we're going to cultivate our hearts, every area of our lives, to make sure that God does a beautiful thing as our lives flourish. And so today, I have my very first guest, and I'm super excited. I love her, and I've known her for a few years now, and I've been so blessed and encouraged by her story, by her life, by her testimony, and I know that you will too. And I want you to just lean in, and I know that maybe you're walking through a season like that in your life. Maybe you're not. But whether you are or you're not, I believe that there's parts of the story that are going to speak to you and that you're going to find some gold and encouragement in. So today, I have the honor of sitting down with my friend Ketsia. And I am so honored and happy to have you here and for you to be my first guest.
Thank you. You are too kind, too kind. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for what Calvary is doing. I'm specifically excited for what we are doing, reaching women who just need to be surrounded by that love, need to be surrounded and encouraged in all the seasons that we're walking through. And it's just something amazing about women encouraging women in the different seasons that they are. So I'm excited to be here.
Yay, I'm excited. So I've known you for a few years. Yes. I want to say, how long have you been at Calvary for?
I came right before the pandemic, actually.
So 2019.
Yes, about 2019. Henry and I had been looking for a church, and looking for a church is hard because we had come from a church we were active in, but then there was some drama. And, when you train up leaders want to be able to work in a church. So we just were starting to look for a new church. And so we found Calvary, and I was like, we found a church finally. And then COVID hit. And it was like shut down. So we've been there almost about 5-6 years now. And so it's exciting. We started coming. And honestly, we were just attending, actually, like a 6:30 service they used to have. We were just attending, and Michael, who used to be a campus pastor.
Yes,
he
moved to
invited
Orlando,
us to join a Connect group.
Awesome.
He invited us to join a Connect group because we were just attending. And when we joined that Connect group, listen, everything after that was downhill. We were going nowhere. We actually considered moving, but Calvary kept us here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Which is why we always talk about relationships.
Yes.
And we say, like, we're not just telling people to join a group just joining a group, but it really makes a difference. And so you serve in our kids team, and you're the best.
Oh, no, stop it.
I will go there and just be with the kids and you. It's so fun.
I have always had a heart for kids. I love kids. I met Miriam in our Connect group, and we were looking for somewhere to serve. And so she's like, oh, I'm in kids ministry. And I was like, well, I teach. I love kids. So, plug me in. But it's funny because initially I was looking for youth, like to serve in the youth. Yeah. And she's like, well, I'm in the elementary. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But I love them. They are my babies. I love them dearly. So I know that it was obviously God's providence that we were in that connect group. We met Miriam, and I was able to serve in the kids ministry. So
I'm grateful for people like you, because now that I have a daughter, I mean, we've always wanted to pour into kids ministry because it's just training up that next generation.
Right.
But I drop off my kid on Sundays and I don't worry about a thing. Like, I know she is learning, she's having fun. I know that there's people like you there that just care so much for them. And so I appreciate you. But actually, talking about kids, that's something we're going to talk about today. When I was thinking about your story, I was thinking about this idea of, what do we do when God isn't answering our prayer? Or doesn't answer our prayer, at least for a while, or, you feel stuck. And so I've been able to be part of that story, watch some of that story for the past few years. And, I'm grateful to have been able to be there and pray for you and Henry and you wanting to have a child. I know that you struggled with that for a long time. And so I've only been part of that for a few years. But how long were you, like, that desire for you to be a mom, and it wasn't happening?
It was even before I got married. I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I'm the eldest of 6 kids. And so I was always mommy at home because I was the eldest for my siblings. And so I was the one who made dinners, helped with homework, and also would just, be a part of their life. I would go to my siblings' games, and I loved it. I knew that I was always going to be a mommy. It was never a question for me. And I think it's funny how we make plans, but we don't, check with God. We just make our own plans and be like, God, you coming along with me. So
this is what I want.
Yes, this is what I want. So I'm just sending you my list. And we got married. And of course, the first couple of years of marriage, you're like, if it happens, it happens. If it don't, that's okay. So I would say after the first 2 years of marriage, we just were like, okay, now let's kind of start. And so we went in and, they said, hey.
This is how many years ago?
We've been married for 15 years.
Okay, so this is 13 years ago.
Yes. Okay. So about 13 years ago, we went in and we're like, okay, nothing's happening, let's go and get some checkups and things like that. And we got our checkups and they're just like, okay, well, nothing's happening, but, we'll continue on with the process. And it's called like undiagnosed, really, what they say. So then we just kind of go in and, it kind of put it on the back burner of just not worrying about it and just kind of went through life. So I'm kind of grateful for some of that time because it just allowed us to be able to pour in different areas without thinking about it. But I would say definitely within the last 5 years, so a little bit before I got to Calvary, it just felt like I knew that I had a timeline for my life of what I wanted. And so it just felt at that point like, okay, God, what's going on now? Like, I've grown up in church. I've always been in church. So for me, it was never a question of if God can do this. I always knew he could do it. But for me, it was like, will he do it for me? That was the part, that was the struggle. And so we continued with our marriage and and everybody around me was just like, don't worry. It's just stop thinking about it. And it's so hard to hear things like that sometimes. Don't worry. Don't think about it.
It's like, it's not that easy to not think about it and not worry when I'm the one going through it.
This is the desire.
And I feel like people, we have to, I'm glad you said that because I feel like as people who mean well, right? We all mean well, but we have to be so careful and aware of what we say because we mean well. But you can't tell someone who's desperate about something, who's trying, this is your desire. Like, just don't think about it. Like, just it's like,
or just trust God.
How? Right.
Just trust God as if my faith was not enough, So those were things that were, and like you said, they all meant well, but they hurt sometimes to hear some of those things. So we just continued on with our journey. And I would say in the last 5 or 6 years is really when I felt like it started to weigh on me. And just, I had been to so many baby showers. I had been to all of my siblings, who are all younger than me,
Yeah.
had families. I've gone to weddings and then gone to their baby showers of people who've been married after me and seen their families
You're
grow.
seeing it happen for them, but not for you.
I'm literally
Yeah.
watching life go on, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm stuck.
How did that test your beliefs? Because some of the things you were saying earlier is you have a desire, you know that God can do it, but yet you find yourself praying for something, and after maybe a year, maybe two, how did that make, like, what was your thought process in that moment of thinking, like, okay, God, how do I continue to trust you, or just battling with that, like your faith?
So some of the things is, like I said, I knew God could do it because of so many things he had done. So I knew he could do it. But the thing was whether he would do it for me. So it felt like, God, have you forgotten me? God, am I not worthy of this gift? Am I not worthy of? So I felt like in those moments, the devil is so good because he makes you feel like you are alone and that you are far from God. God doesn't hear you, or God's not listening to you, because it's not that God can't do it. It's just that he's not doing it for you.
Right.
And so that's what I struggle with.
So it makes you feel like it's a you problem. Like you're the problem.
Yes, it's not God, it's me.
Yeah, because he's done it.
Because he's God, he will do everything.
Yeah.
He has the power. I have seen him do miracles, and I believe that he can, but it's me. So what is it that I have to do, or why is it that I'm not worthy, or, why is it that I don't know what you have for me? Because I feel like I am active in church. I pray, I read my Bible. I feel like I'm walking the life that you want for me. I'm not perfect.
Yeah, but that's something that I feel like us as believers, we tend to go to when we find ourselves in those moments of struggling with our faith, where we say, well, God, I serve you, and I'm a good person, and I go to church, and I lead a connect group, and I do all these things.
Like, I deserve this. Because,
And it's like this mentality that we can't work ourselves, for God's, for God to do something for us. Is this understanding that God already did more than enough. But this feeling that our human, like our flesh struggles with, that's like, God, but if I'm doing all these things, and it's that reminder that life happens to everyone, and it's not based on how much you serve, those are things we do because we understand what God has done for us, but navigate, and of course, and it's a human thing to feel. And we might be jumping around a little bit, but as I hear you speak, I would say that, I found out that you guys were trying, and that it had been difficult, and whatnot.
It was actually a prayer service. And that prayer service, it was actually a turning point, that prayer service. My husband
We're going to talk about the same prayer service.
Oh, yes. So he was out of town for work. He travels a lot for work. And I was actually in the middle of actually doing fertility treatments. So before that prayer service, that Wednesday night prayer service, I had just gotten a no, right? I got a negative test after a treatment. And then it was my mom's birthday. My mom is a huge faith prayer warrior. So when I tell you from the time that I told her, Mom, I really want to have a child, but it's not working, she has been praying, and we call each other every night. And me, my mom, my sister, every night we call each other, except for like Sunday. And we pray on the phone, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But can you imagine years of hearing your mom pray, Lord, I know you're going to do this. I know you're going to do this. And her birthday had just passed, and I thought through this treatment, I was like, oh, this would be an amazing birthday gift to say, Mom, guess what? So I got the negative. Her birthday had just passed, and one of the nights we were praying, she was crying. She was like, Lord, I keep telling you, I know you're going to do this. And I felt such a burden of, Lord, you hear her prayer, you know my prayer, and yet you're so silent on this issue. And so I walked into that prayer service with other things on my heart, but I just felt defeated. And when I tell you, we called for the couples who were struggling with fertility, I almost didn't even go because I was by myself. My husband was traveling. And so I almost didn't go, and something pushed me. And when I went up there, I didn't even have the words. I literally fell on the floor because it was like, I don't have the words. It's just my groans and my cries. And when I tell you, you came to me and you knew exactly what I felt, because I don't know if you remember what you said was, God sees you, God hears you. And that's how I felt in that moment. I felt forgotten. I felt forgotten.
That service, it is the same service. And we have been praying. I know in the past we had prayed for both of you guys in another setting or whatnot. That night marked me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because I know there's people that are going through this, and I've heard and you can, to some degree empathize with them as best as you can, but you haven't walked through that, so you don't fully grasp the weight of it.
Right.
So you can feel bad for someone and pray for them and hope for them. But I think that night I was able to see another side of another level of a desperate heart that I had never seen in my life. Yeah. That night, I'm looking at you from this side and I'm praying, and we're praying, and you have cried. Like you were just out loud, like just choking up and crying.
Yes.
And that sound will forever stay in my heart and in my mind, because it was sad because I could feel your pain.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful in the sense that I can see this just person who's just so desperate for God and for a miracle. And it made me think beyond this scenario, that's what God wants from us in every area of our lives. Like if we could just be so desperate for him, not just when there's something we want on the line, but that moment moved me, and I just felt in my heart, just ran to you and I just prayed for you. And, and I think we spoke a little bit after that service.
Yes.
But it moved me in such a way that I always think back to that moment. And I went home and I started thinking about it, like, God, I want to have a heart for you that wants you and your will for my life and every area of my life, not just when I'm desperate for something I want, but in general, because you are so good.
Yes.
And that night, you mentioning the ups and downs. So it wasn't just the not getting pregnant, is the getting excited and then being let down.
Yeah.
Like, how did you navigate that?
That journey it's so tough, because it feels like you have hope. These are hope. I'm hoping for the things that I want in life. And I'm trusting that, I'm going to put my hope and I'm going to let God do the rest. So I'm going to hope and let God do the rest. But then when you get that negative, then it's back like, I didn't have enough faith. God didn't speak on this. God is telling me no. That's another one.
Yeah.
Is God telling you no and you just don't want to hear it? I struggle with that. I struggle also with, don't you see the blessings that are around you?
Yeah.
How can you be so fixated on one thing when God has blessed you with a loving husband? You have a roof over your head. You have an amazing church community, and those are important things to me. So you have all of that. Is that not enough? I mean, you woke up this morning. That should be enough. So why is it that you're so fixated on this one thing when God has given you everything else?
Yeah.
And that would be another thing that would make me feel like I'm not grateful for what God has done for my life. And so I struggle with that, because I'm like, God, I know what you have done for me. And I know that you're a good God. And I still want this. And I still am asking you, please hear my heart, because I am okay with a no. If God had a no for me, I was okay with it. But the desire was still in my heart. And I would pray.
You would pray for God to take that away if it wasn't his will.
God, please take this desire away. Because if it's a no, you have to remove this desire from my heart. Yeah. I can't do it. I still long for this. So I need you to remove that desire so that I can move on and do whatever it is that you have for me. Yeah. Because clearly you're telling me no. And that's how I felt.
And I think some of those things you mentioned you were thinking about are things that we should do in moments like that. Like sometimes God isn't giving us exactly what we want. And I think in those moments, it's important to consider what we do have.
Right.
And have some perspective that it's not just what I want, but it's what God has already given me. And it's not a fun place to be at, because you're like, okay, yeah, cool, great. but, you know?
Right.
But there is a level that is needed in our lives when we don't get our way. Because I think sometimes in different scenarios, we can be angry at God for what he hasn't given us. And we fail to realize that the Christian life is one of dying to ourselves.
Yes.
Like we weren't put here on this earth to just get whatever we wanted.
Exactly.
And God has told us, you know, himself, like in life, you will have trouble.
Yes.
Like you will be persecuted, you know, because of me, because of my name, you will have, but there's this hope on the other end. There's this hope on the other side. And that's a difficult thing to navigate through, but it's worth it.
Yes.
You know?
And especially if something that you want, you feel like this is not a bad thing that I'm asking for. But the question is, what does God have for you in that moment?
Yeah.
It's not about it's not about you in that moment.
Yeah.
It's about God's will and what he's doing.
Yeah.
And obviously hindsight is 20/20. When you look back, you see all these things we were able to do. We're able to commit of our time and ourselves because we had that flexibility, you know, while we were waiting, but you don't look at those things and you don't see those pictures.
Yeah.
You're so focused on what is it that I want sometimes.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of women who could be in this moment, maybe wanting or having that desire that you had, but maybe longing for something else. Right. Maybe there's someone that's longing for God to heal them,
right? You
know, from a disease. Maybe it's someone longing for God to heal their marriage.
Yes.
And it might seem like you may be doing all the right things, but it's not happening. And so it's hard to reconcile the fact that we could be doing all the right things,
right,
but there's so many more moving pieces at play.
Yes.
And there's a sense that we need to come to a place, and it's easier said than done, absolutely.
Yes.
Of contentment.
Yes.
Of being content with what we have. And I think we are not very good at it, especially in the world we live in, especially in America, where we're used to getting things our way, how we want it, when we want them. But that's something that I think we need to practice a little more in practical ways in the everyday life. But it's hard.
100%. There's a little bit before we got our daughter, after one Sunday, because our church has been booming, and we see that in our kids' ministry. So one Sunday after service, I had 50 kids in my one service.
Wow.
And I left church thinking, and I had to sit down and I had to check myself. I said, you keep crying for one baby, right? You keep crying for one baby. Here, God has given you 50 lives to be able to do something. And I had to check myself.
That's
I was
beautiful.
like, what are you doing with those 50 lives? Start focusing on that and stop focusing on the fact that you didn't get this one. He's giving you 50 in front of you.
So that night, I think it was that night that we spoke, and I told you, God might be...
Yes.
God is able to answer your prayer, or could answer your prayer, but it might just come in a different way that you expected.
Girl, and it's so funny because a lot of people don't know, right, that my husband is adopted. And it's something that we talked about, back burner though. We said we'd be open to adoption, but throughout this process, we really never talked about it. Yeah. And obviously I know it's God that, put that on your heart to say that, but it just re-triggered the fact that we had talked about that. We had talked that, hey, you know what, this would be an option. So when you said, listen, God may answer but just not the way that you're expecting to, be open to that. It re-triggered something that I didn't realize that we hadn't gone back to.
Can I tell you, I doubted saying that at that moment so much because I didn't want to be insensitive to how you were feeling. And what we were saying earlier, like I didn't want to be that person that meant well, but did something that was harmful, like that would hurt you.
Yes.
But I just had to, because I've been thinking about it for such a long time to tell you, and I'm waiting for the right time to be like, God can't do it, but it just might look different. Just be open to it.
And I feel like in those moments, whether or not it might seem insensitive, the heart that God has given you behind stating that. You just got to go and let it lie where it lie. I feel like that's different than just platitudes of just, hey, don't worry, trust God. Yeah. But God is pushing you and put that on your heart to say that. Adam also, he came to me one time and he said, listen, God is going to do this in a way that only he will get the glory. I didn't want to hear that. I was like, no, God, give it to me the regular way, the boring way. I don't want the extraordinary way.
I just want it.
I just want the regular, boring way. And he said, he didn't want to say that to me, but he was one of the ones that I came back to, and I was just like, look what God did, and look how he did it in such an extraordinary way.
Yeah.
That is just beyond anything we could have thought of.
Yes. And there could be someone that's like watching right now, thinking about that, thinking, about their prayer. Mm-hmm. God ultimately knows the whole story.
Yes.
Sees beyond what we can see.
Yes.
Sometimes we not like the way he answers or what he tells us, but there's a reason why he does it.
Yes.
And so, yes, it may not come packaged the way you expected,
Correct.
but it might be the one thing you need. And for you, yes, now we'll get to that now.
Yes.
But for other people, it may come in the way of maybe a closed door,
right.
for a reason.
Right.
But it's definitely a journey to deal with that. And thinking back of those times, and now that I mentioned that, I doubted even telling you that. I've never told you this. Mm-hmm. But shortly after that, I got pregnant.
Really?
I want to say probably, what year was this? This was probably, 2 years ago? 3?
Yes. No, it's about, yeah.
I want to say,
yes.
yeah. So
almost
Aria
3
will be
years
2
ago.
at the end of the year. So just about.
Mm-hmm.
When I found out I was pregnant, you were the only person I could think about.
No.
And I'm like crying.
No, I was going to say, you're killing me. You're killing me.
Because I felt such guilt
Oh.
that God was giving me something he wasn't giving you.
Mm.
And I, unlike you, I never had that crazy desire to be a mom. So I felt like, God, why are you doing this for me? Like, I would much rather you do that for Ketsia.
And it's crazy because that was also a struggle, celebrating and truly, honestly, celebrating. It was so funny because that was a season where, when I tell you everybody and their mama was getting pregnant at church,
yes,
everybody and their
that
mama was getting,
season.
yes. And so everybody was like, don't drink the water. And I was like, give me the water. I want to bathe in it. There was so much joy, even though there was like hurt for like, I want to celebrate to myself, but there was so much joy. And I would not want to feel like that. I would not want anyone to feel like they cannot celebrate because they know my pain.
Yeah.
So that was something, again, that I didn't want anybody to feel that way. But sometimes I would look at family members who had gotten pregnant and were completely upset about the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I'd just be like, oh, really, God? Really? Them, not me. Them, not me. And so, or just stories I knew of people who aborted. And I'm just like, I need you to explain this to me because I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know my desire. And yet, here people are killing and throwing away babies. Mm-hmm. So that was tough. That was tough. But God does things because he sees the whole picture and he understands. And in that moment, I just had to celebrate. I had to celebrate what God was doing. I knew that I loved my church and it was growing. And I just had to celebrate and sit there and celebrate. And that's what I did. In that moment, it wasn't always easy. And don't get me wrong. I had my ugly crybaby moments where I just be like throwing a big temper tantrum in front of God, like on the floor, hands and kicking, being like, God, please, why aren't you doing this? Please explain this to me. Yeah. But other moments, it was nice to be able to celebrate and be like, I see what you're doing and I'm going to celebrate in this moment. So it's that walk is not easy. But just the fact that you have that heart, it's so important to be surrounded by people who have hearts like that. This community, this church, it got me through a lot because that was a breaking moment for me. Mm-hmm. And the people who would come back and be like, Henry had a men's group who had an alarm that they would pray every night or every once a week. Mm-hmm. And they would pray and their alarm would go off and they would pray and they would pray. And just to know these group of men were getting together and praying. You want to know one of the things that kept me going through is that community. Because when I didn't have the faith to stand, they had the faith for me to
Yeah.
encourage me. Don't worry. I'm praying. Keep going.
Yeah. And when we talk about that, that's why you try to put so much emphasis on that. It's like, it's not a sales pitch.
No.
We don't tell you to be part of community, to be part of team, to be part of this, because of any other reason that is going to help your life, because we've lived it. Like Alex and I have lived it from day one that we got to church. The difference that it makes to have people around you that are going to help you stand when you can't stand on your own. And the difference that it makes to just know that people are praying for you, that people care about you. And what you were saying before, it's that both of those things can exist. It's not either or. It's not... I could only be happy for people and, it's just the way it should be.
Right.
But I can be happy for people while at the same time mourning for that one thing that I can't have.
Correct.
And it doesn't make you a bad person.
No.
It just makes you a human, right? That I can celebrate you, but at the same time, I can be saddened by what I haven't received yet.
And that's okay. Sometimes you struggle feeling like, oh, I shouldn't feel that way and I get that. Yeah. But that's okay. That's okay. And having people around you saying, it's okay to be upset. It's okay. That's fine. We'll pray. You don't stay there. You don't stay in that valley, right? You get up and you keep going. You might come back down. You have another down moment, but you don't stay there. Because I feel like that's when the enemy wins, when you stay in that despair, So yes, it's okay to have those moments, but don't stay there because you don't know what God is doing.
Yeah,
you don't know what God is doing.
I always say that to people. It's okay to feel your feelings. It's normal and you should.
Yes.
The problem is when you stay in that place. That's when, that's where you shouldn't be. But thinking back on that in that time, God also had to speak to me and be like, okay, you can't do that. You can't go through life.
Right.
Or like getting every scenario and putting it in that perspective, because at the end of the day, I do things that you might never understand the reason why.
100%.
And so while there's a beauty in you, in your sentiment, you also have to let me be God. Like there's just something that you can't change. You can't. It's just the way that it is. And I'm gonna do my thing in at the right time. And so now walk me through, it's been all these up and downs and disappointments and hurt.
Yes. And I've gotten to a point where I've asked God, please just remove this desire. I'm okay with the no, remove this desire. And I think Raquel had been like, if the desire is there, just pray and continue and continue to trust. And so in my heart of hearts, I was not even thinking about anything, but something just said, oh, I'm sorry. So we get to a point where we do one more treatment and I find out I'm pregnant.
That's right.
And I was so excited. I called my mom. I called my sister. And I mean, right after I got that first positive. And so I was like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. God finally said yes. And then a couple of weeks later, we find out that we lost it. And when I tell you, my heart was so broken, I realized this was the biggest door slammed in my face.
Because that was probably worse than just
exactly. It was. It was like, here you go, and I took it back.
Yeah.
So
how did you navigate that? As far as your faith, how did you not wake up one day and just said, God, you don't care, you're not real, I'm not doing this anymore?
I just was angry, and I'm not a person who stews in anger very long. So I struggle with the anger because it felt like there was the meanest way that God could say no. It just was. And so for me, it felt like I couldn't even turn to God, even though I know that he could do this. But I felt like I couldn't turn to him because I was so angry, and as if God didn't know my heart.
Yeah.
But I was so angry that I didn't want to come before him with this anger in my heart. So it kind of pushed me away because I just felt like, God, I'm so angry and I don't want to come to you angry because you've done so much and you've blessed me so much, but I'm angry. And so it just kind of put a wedge. I know God can do this, but he said no, and I'm angry. And I struggle with that anger. I struggle with, I don't want to be in this place because I feel that I'm definitely a person who has a lot of joy.
Were you ever resentful towards God?
No, it wasn't towards God. It was towards the fact that it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So I felt like, again, I've watched specifically my brother God helped my brother get up from a broken neck and walk to the hospital. So when I tell you, I could not say that God can't do it. I know he could do it, but it just felt like, why not me? So I continue to feel forgotten and abandoned. So those were the things that I felt like, God, you've forgotten me or you've abandoned me. But I just know he could do it. So
how did you keep moving forward in the midst of feeling abandoned and not seen? Like how did you?
It's a community, because sometimes it wasn't me. Mm-hmm. People would tell me, don't worry. I can see you feel defeated. Somebody told me during another prayer service, you look like you've given up. And just pray. I don't worry, I'm praying for you, because you look like you've given up, but I'm praying for you that God gives you a fresh wind. Mm-hmm. And so it was the community, because sometimes it wasn't me. I didn't have the strength, and I didn't have the faith to move forward. Yeah. But it was the community around me that helped push me forward. Like, I'm not going to leave you down there. So I think those were the things that helped me to push forward, because when you've got that much around you, you can't stay in that anger. You can't stay in that spot. You have to say, all right, God, everybody is believing, and their faith is, to me, sometimes it's contagious. When people have it and you need it. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things that I just had to be like, okay, it's a no, and I'm gonna move forward. That's fine. It's a no. I'm gonna move forward, and that's fine, and we'll just continue on. So I was prepared with the no. After that loss, I was prepared with the no.
And so what happened after that loss?
So after that loss, everybody still had their faith and was continuing. And David Campbell came. Yeah. And they were like, hey, he's coming. We want him to pray over you again. Yeah. And girl, I walked over like, he could pray, but
whatever.
I don't care. Whatever. God is no. So
you almost could become cynical. Like I've done this way too many times. I've come up for prayer way too many times, and I know how this goes.
So he came and he prayed over us, and you know, I really was like, okay, you know, I still get emotional about it, but it's not because I'm expecting something to happen. Right. So he came to pray over us, and I just was like, thank you.
Can I say I noticed that day?
Did you?
Like, yeah, I'm like, Etzia's she's like, okay, whatever about it. Yes. I could see it in your face. I'm
just like, yes, you know, I'm not going to be rude. I mean,
of course. You're like, I'll take the prayer, but I know how it goes.
But I just took it and kept going on with my life and was not even considering anything about it. So, but something in the back of my mind said, you know what? We talked about the adoption thing. School's about to start. Let's just look at what the process would look like. What would you need? And so without even Henry knowing, I started working on the adoption process, getting the background, the papers. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, I bring papers to him, like, babe, sign here. So right here. I started that process, and I started that process shortly after they prayed, just started the process, and had, and got what we need is, I can't remember the name of it, but we need to be certified in order to foster and or adopt. Yeah. So we did that process, completed it, right, relatively quickly. I found an online service, completed relatively quickly. And honestly, I did not think anything of it. I just said, I'm just doing it because there's something telling me to do it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anything's because that requires a whole nother waiting process. So I knew that this did not mean.
And that's another hope up that you can have.
Exactly.
And somebody disappointment.
Yes. And so I did it, but I was like, I don't think I have the heart for like the up and down right now.
Yeah.
So, so we continued on, and because of our certification we received, we got put on a Facebook page. And I'm not always techie about checking things, but that Facebook page would post any situations that would come. So we were getting ready to go to a marriage conference because there was so much that was going on, the ups and downs. I felt like we weren't connecting. Not that we had a bad place. Homeboy's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But we just weren't connecting. And so we decided, let's go to this marriage conference, because if we are looking at the possibility of adoption, we need to know that we're on stable ground, because that could be another thing that's thrown at us that we struggle with. So we decided to move forward and go to that conference. The conference was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Thursday, we did a photo shoot for Flourish. So that Thursday night, I went home and I opened up the Facebook page, and then there was a situation that popped up. It said, African-American mother and Hispanic dad is looking for a married couple. And I was like, look, babe, this is us.
This is us.
This is us. They're looking for us. And so, like, very cynically, I was like, hey, let's go and do this, knowing that this was not going to be the thing. I said, at best, we'll get a no, but at best, they'll give us tips on what we need to do. Mm-hmm. So my mindset was already no. So that Friday, I submitted what they needed. We had to complete make a whole book on the way to the marriage conference. I completed the book. I had to submit it by midnight, 11:59. I pressed send, prayed, and left it alone and went on to my marriage conference. So we're at the marriage conference, having a good time. And at lunch, they called and said, hey, by the way, the mom picked you. And in that moment, I was just like, this is not real. Even then, I did not believe that this is what God had for me. Hey, listen, this is a last minute situation. The mom is just now trying to find a family. Mm-hmm. So my heart of heart is like, she picked us, but when she has the baby, she's going to change her mind, So we leave. They said, hey, she's going to have the baby in 2 weeks. So Friday, we send the information. Saturday, she picks us. We're headed back. The conference was in Fort Myers. We're headed back home. We're heading home, and they call us and say, the mom's going into labor on Sunday. And we're just like, what does that mean? Like, we need you to come to Daytona and come get this baby. So
that is insane.
Even then, I did not believe, because I said, we've got to turn around and go back. This mom is going to spend time with this baby, and she's going to change her mind. We told no one, because I learned from the first time we got pregnant not to tell anyone. Mm-hmm. We told no one. We got home, threw clothes in our bag, and headed straight for Daytona. And I walked in there saying, God forgive me. I walked in there saying, she's going to change her mind. God is not going to give this to me, because he's already told me no. So even though there was a little hope that, hey, this might be for me, I was already saying no to God's gift for me, because I had the mindset that he told me no. And how often do we say, oh, God told me no, because it's not the way I pictured it was going to be. Yeah. So I walked in there, and there's this gorgeous, beautiful baby. The mom had just given birth. We got there about an hour after she was born. And I walked in there, and I'm trying to have small talk, because I've never been in this situation. How was labor? How you doing? And I walked in there, and I'm staring at this beautiful baby, trying not to snatch her out of the mom's arms. And I looked at her, and I told her, she's beautiful. She is perfect. And she picked her up, and she said, she's perfect for you. Ugh. And I lost it at that moment, because she picked her up and gave her to me. And she's never left my arms since then. Mm. She's been in my arms since that moment that she picked her up and gave her to me. And I had to go back and say, Lord, I'm sorry, because what you do it bigger and better than we can expect. Yeah. If we can just trust you, it's going to be bigger and better than I can expect, because she is so much more than I asked for. She is more than I feel like I deserve. Mm-hmm. It's like God was like, you see what I was doing? You needed to be still, but you couldn't see what I was doing. And the thing that sticks with me, that someone said, I don't remember who, they said, you waited so she wouldn't have to, because she didn't wait for her parents. She was born and her parents were there. So you waited so this little girl wouldn't have to. And that has stuck with me. It makes the 15 years of waiting seem like nothing, because she didn't have to wait. My daughter didn't have to suffer and go from home to home to home, because we were there. Yeah. So that's one of the things that people
can look at your story and think, okay, yes, she got that prayer answered, but it still wasn't the initial prayer she asked.
Right.
But does that matter?
No, no. And it's so funny when I started the process, oh, this is not really, the way that I wanted things.
Right.
But let me tell you, no one could tell me anything, number one, because of what God has done. But no one could tell me anything about this little girl. She was for me. She was meant to be my daughter. So whether or not this is the way that I consider I was needed to get to motherhood, that didn't matter because God had a greater plan.
Yeah.
He really had a greater plan. So it doesn't matter that it's not the directions that I saw to the journey. Like God had a better journey. He had a better end result. So he knew the reason. And I'm grateful for my journey.
Yeah.
I couldn't say that in it. I could not say that. At the end of it, I am grateful because when I tell you, there is nothing anyone can tell me about the faith that I have of what God can do. It is unshakable. Even now that we're dealing with my father-in-law and cancer, I have a faith that truly is unshakable because of what God did, because of what I went through. I'm grateful for it because what it has done to my faith. I am.
Yeah.
God knew better.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. And that's why, I thought about you because I know that your story would encourage so many people. You don't have to be walking through your same journey to be encouraged because I know that there are women out there that, like I said, are facing that moment of God isn't answering my prayer. Or God, do you see me?
Yes.
God, do you hear my prayer? Like my desperate prayers.
Yes.
And the answer is yes. Yes, he does. And he's doing something. And I think the point here is do not give up your faith.
100%.
Do not give up in trusting. Do not give up in believing. But there's a twist because for some, the answers will be different.
Right.
For some, the answer might be no. And it might hurt to get a no.
Yes.
But when he gives you a no, he also gives you the tools you need to navigate that
100%.
no. Or if he gives you a not yet, he'll give you the tools to navigate
100%.
that. But he's still writing our story.
Correct.
And the beautiful thing about it is that there is a part we can do, which is continue to trust, surround ourselves with people.
Yes.
And continue to trust the process and know that at one point, our story will speak for itself and help people, which is what you're doing today with your story. You encourage me. You encourage my faith. You encourage me to continue to trust God and believe. And I am so happy to see you in this new role of mom. And she is beautiful.
Yes.
She is perfect.
Yes.
She is perfect for you. And I am excited to see her grow up in the house and
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for being surrounded by this community that continues to remind us that God is there. He has not abandoned you.
Yeah.
Do not let the enemy leave you with this, I've been abandoned. No. God is there. Even if you feel that way, you are not abandoned. You are not alone. Stay encouraged. And it's hard sometimes in the journey, but trust. God has done it before. And he will do it again.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for talking to me today. So if you're watching today, we're so grateful that you spend this time with us. And be encouraged. Be encouraged that you are seen. And God does hear you, even when you sometimes may doubt it. And our prayer for you today is that you can remain faithful even in the difficult situations of life, that you can remain faithful, strong in your beliefs, surrounded by the right people, and believing and trusting that God has a better plan for your life, and that waiting is always worth it, and that God will do something in your life and give you everything that you need to navigate through any season of life. And we love you. We'll see you on the next podcast. We are excited, and we'll see you soon.